asked to give. First, let me tell you who I am. I used to work, as I said in the chat, for USDA. Left USDA when I retired. But when I was at USDA, I was working with Randy Olson, trying to help scientists improve the way they wrote and the way they communicated. So when I retired, I continued to work, and now I work with Randy. We work with a number of groups, ranging from the World Bank to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to one of their groups, to Pfizer, to the National Park Service. So we work with a wide range of groups. And I will be here through some of this to get you started, and then Randy will take over. Philip asked me to let you all know that when you get to Denver, you'll all be receiving a copy of this book, which is the Narrative Gym for Science. We sent you a PDF copy of it. The AJS has a hard copy for you, and everyone will get a copy of that. They also have 30 copies of the Narrative Gym for Medicine, which is our newest book. These two books are almost the same. There's a little bit of difference in the appendices of them, but if you're interested in the medicine one, particularly if you're thinking of it someday going into the medical field, contact people there, and they have enough, I would say, to get, not enough to give to everyone, but while supplies last, they will be happy to provide you a copy. Both of these tell you the same basics about the ABT narrative structure and what to do. They just have slightly different appendices and slightly different examples that they use. The next announcement is that on Tuesday, January 16th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time is the second poster follow-up for individuals wanting some additional advice about their posters. If you have questions you want to talk to someone about, they will be available at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm told to tell you to be sure to register for it, so you get the registration link so that you can attend that if you wish. It's not for everyone. It's only for those who want some additional information. Additionally, here, I tell you there's a couple other people from our group. My daughter, Elizabeth, is sitting in on this, and she's worked with us on and off some. And Haley Woodworth from Redmond, Washington, who has recently begun working with Randy and has spent a lot of time over the last couple of weeks reading both the ABTs you sent in as well as the ABTs that we have from previous AJS activities. We have about 125 to 150 ABTs now over the last couple of years, and we're starting to see some trends in them and learn some lessons about how narratives are constructed and where the issues most often are. So with that as an introduction, Philip, is there anything else that we need to touch on, or have I got all of them?
That's wonderful, Mike. Thank you.
Okay. And if you would, I guess Rachel will watch for others to come in. Let me start by replaying a video that most of you should have seen, but it's worth sharing again because the lessons from it are really important. So I want to replay this video.
Hi there. We run a communications training program built around the ABT framework. The ABT stands for and, but, therefore, a single sentence template to lock in the narrative core of your material. Here's a sample ABT. Effective communication is essential and narrative structure is at its core, but it can take time to learn. Therefore, you need to work on it. In the fall of 2022, John Room of the World Bank demonstrated to us exactly how to put our technique to use powerfully. I ran a workshop on the ABT in Nepal. All morning long, John was asking some of the toughest questions I've ever gotten. But at lunch, he explained that he wasn't being skeptical, just wanting to make sure how to use the ABT. A few weeks later, I saw what he meant as he put it immediately to use during a site visit to the Jamuna River in Bangladesh. The ABT consists of 3 parts: setup, problem, solution, meaning the activities being taken to address the problem. For the Jamuna River, John presented a couple of key details. In his first piece of setup information, he gives some initial idea of why this project is so important.
The first thing that strikes me is the magnitude and scale of this river.
In his second piece of setup, he addresses what's at stake by projecting towards the future.
The second thing that's clear is the huge opportunity to reap economic benefits from the sustainable management of this river.
He goes into a few details about how the project has so much potential. Everything is positive up until now, but then he presents his statement of the problem by dropping what we like to call the butt bomb.
But this will be a long, complex process. It will require significant investment.
That is the problem. Significant investment is needed. He goes into detail on the scale of the challenge. Then he closes with what it all means to the World Bank.
Therefore, from the World Bank's perspective, we're very proud to be involved in starting on this journey through a first project that will be one of many in a series that will help develop the Jamuna in a way that can deliver the potential that it has to offer. Thank you.
So to review, looking at his script, he gave his setup, then stated the problem, then moved on to the solution. This is the structure of the ABT, plain and simple. Think about what you do when you compress computer files. You might take a 16 megabyte file and compress it down into 2 megabytes for emailing. This is the same thing the ABT helps you do in taking a large, complicated project and compressing the core of it down to convey the essence of what is being worked on. And now 3 questions for John Room himself.
The value of the ABT is that it gives you a framework to think about how to clearly communicate to a wide audience about what we're doing. We've used the ABT in 2 ways. One is to communicate through video and written communication to a wide range of audiences, key messages of what we're doing in order to get their buy-in to the direction we're going in. Secondly, within our management team, we have used this as a framework to distill what is most important in terms of our strategic direction, and hence to coalesce the senior management team around that management direction and messaging. The World Bank's mission is to eliminate extreme poverty and reduce inequality in a sustainable way. This requires interventions across multiple sectors in a coordinated way and bringing a large number of stakeholders behind these initiatives. But with a lot of smart people working in this area from a lot of different disciplines, this messaging can often get confused. Therefore, it's important to have a framework that pulls together this messaging that allows the different stakeholders to align behind the visions and the directions and the strategies in which we're going. And the ABT gives us a framework that allows us to do this.
Okay, and I believe Randy Olson is here. So Randy, I'm going to turn this over to you if you're all set up with Rachel.
Okay, I think I'm getting my act together here. Yes, I have made it. Sorry, just back from tennis match that we had. So let's see here. How's everything going, Mike?
We're doing well. We're doing well. We just heard from John Room, and let me just add one last thing for that. The purpose of this, where you would use this and why this fits with the poster session. This ABT we're talking about is going to be really effective if it's at the top of your poster, whether it's the top of your abstract, the top of your introduction, because it's going to tell everybody what you're doing and what it's about, and in a very clear, short way. And with that, I'll turn it over to Randy.
Wonderful. Okay. Welcome everybody. Great to be with you folks all over the place, I'm sure. And what we're going to do for the next 45 minutes, I'm going to give you a little bit more background on this ABT framework, this technique for communicating effectively. Mike, give me any notes if anything's not clear with the slides when I get going on them, all that sort of stuff. You can probably heard on the technical side of things. And on that note, let me share my slides here. And I hope that they are all ready to go. And there they are. And that is it, the ABT method. And this is what we're going to be working on. Mike, you can probably mute your video, imagine, while we work on this. And so this is what's at the core of effective communication. And, you know, science itself consists of two main points. And I guess I got to admit people as they're still coming in. Science consists of two main elements. You do the science, and then you have to communicate what it is that you've done. If you don't do both of those parts of it, you really don't manage to do real science. So when it comes to communication, the best way to communicate is to build everything you have to say around this simple dynamic of problem and solution, because that's what you're doing with science. You're constantly posing problems you're seeking the solution to. And then once it comes time to communicate people, all you want to do is just kind of repeat what it was that you did. What was the problem you were working on? How did you solve it? But there's a key part there's a third part to all of this. And that's what I want to begin with here. What I'm going to begin with is to tell you, give me a beer and a mop. So this is the punchline to a very ancient joke, which if I say this to you, give me a beer and a mop, it's not funny at all. The problem is it needs a setup. And so now if I tell you a skeleton walks up to the bar and says, give me a beer and a mop, in your mind, you now start to picture a bar, a skeleton going up, ordering a beer, getting the beer, drinking it. He's got no body to retain it. It all ends up on the floor. So he's going to need a mop to go with it. That's a piece of humor, whether you realize it or not. The key point is that it's not at all humorous if you don't have the right setup. And all of you know what it's like to tell a joke. If you don't tell a joke properly, if you don't set it up properly, it doesn't work. It's the exact same thing as communicating your science. That's the first way to think about this. You know, it's not that you're telling a joke with your science, but it's the same basic dynamic. You need to set things up first, then you tell us what went on. And we've been working with you guys and with scientists in general, research scientists, intensely for the last 5 years, and really for about 20 to 30 years. And I used to be a scientist myself. So a lot of years at this. And one of the patterns that emerges is that people generally have a pretty easy time figuring out what the problem is and telling you what they did to address it. The hardest part of all of this, we've learned, is setting it up. So that's what most of the comments I'm going to have for you today are about. And it's something for you to take away from this session, to know that for the rest of the time, if you get involved with science and you want to communicate about it, your biggest challenge is going to be in setting it up. That's where you make the difference between whether people get interested in what you have to say or if you lose them and they're just like, well, who cares about that? So give me a beer and a mop. You have to set it up. If I said to you just out of the blue, I said, give me a beer, I sequenced a gene. That's not gonna, you're gonna, what are you talking about? Why should I care? And basically give me a beer, that means I'm celebrating. And why should I be celebrating with you? There's a failure to set this up. Now, if I tell you that I've been working for the past 4 years on a very serious disease, and at the core of that is a gene that no one has figured out how to sequence ever, and the gene I just sequenced, suddenly this one line down here has about a much bigger impact. It means that's what you're doing. So again, you've got to have all that setup, and how you do the setup is very challenging. So there are three elements then: setup, and the problem, and the solution. And we color code these three elements. So the setup, we color code with blue. You don't want to challenge people in the setup. You don't want to start off with telling everybody what's wrong with the world, a whole bunch of drama and fireworks, that kind of stuff. You want to bring people in slowly. You want to get some common ground. Agreement is the force at work there for the setup. And so we use the color blue, which is kind of the soothing material that everybody can kind of relax with. Then the problem is where you activate people's minds. And if you've set it up really well, then when you finally tell them, but here's the problem, that's when everybody engages, like, wow, I get it. And then once you've gotten them clear on what your problem is, then you begin to talk about the way you've addressed it and trying to find a solution. In the big picture, there's two basic ways you can present information. And there's one way you can do, which is non-narrative, we refer to it as, and that's the idea of just handing out information. Here's some data on this, here's some graph on this, here's a table of this, here's some numbers on this. And poorly put together presentations will end up like that. and the audience will just be confused. Why are we given all this information? How does it all fit together? That's the job that you face. It's your challenge to figure out how to put it all together. And the way you put it together, again, is this narrative form, this and but therefore structure, these three key elements. You set it up, you present the problem that you worked on, and then you tell us what you did about that. And that's these ABTs you've all done: setup, problem, solution. I'm just going to keep repeating that over and over again, because when we go to work on them, you're going to see that that's the challenge. And what it means then for yourself as a scientist and communicating is that the real world gives you a whole bunch of experiences, a bunch of information, bunch of data. You have to shape that material into a form that people can understand. So think of it this way. You got to make a cylinder, a round peg to go into a round hole. The world gives you this square peg, basically in the form of the and structure. It gives you a whole bunch of data. You go and do a bunch of experiments. You got a whole bunch of knowledge, and then you have to work with it, and you have to shape it to eventually fit that and but therefore the ABT form to slide in. That's what people's brains are programmed to receive. So it means also that there's two elements involved in this. There's the content, the information that you're actually going to be presenting to somebody, and that's what you as an expert know all about that. And then there's the form that we're here to work with you on, which is how you put it together and shape it into this cylinder that will go into people's minds easily so that they won't have to do a lot of work. That's what you want, is for them to enjoy your presentation because it was so well put together that they can tell you back what it was you're talking about, as opposed to walking out the door going, I can't make sense out of what was presented there. So over and over again. One more little catchphrase that we've kind of uncovered in the business they talk a lot about is that nobody buys a solution without a problem. And so you may have done research and found some interesting stuff, but people aren't going to be interested in it until they feel that there's an important problem at work, that they have a problem in particular, if you really want them to be interested. And then once you can get them to understand there's a problem, now they're interested in your solution. But one of the mistakes that gets made a lot is people just presenting data on its own. Look at we got this great solution, and people saying, what's the problem? Why did you do that exactly? So once again, and then lastly, when you do this work, you want to know in the big picture, what is it we want, we're trying to figure out, and then specifically what's the single experiment that you need to do in order to get there. And we're going to go through 4 ABTs now that we're sent in, that we've chosen to work with. And for each one, they've got this kind of dynamic. We know what the big picture is. You're trying to cure a disease, but then we want to know, what do you need to be able to cure that disease? Oh, we need to sequence this gene. Oh, we need to do this study of people. This. So 2 different scales: the big picture, what you want to solve the problem, the big problem, and then what is it you need in order to be able to do that. And I'll keep circling back to that. So, okay, now we are going to start the interactive phase here, and I'm going to work with the 4 research scientists who crafted these 4 one-sentence and but therefore statements. And for each of you, when we get to your ABT, I'll ask you to activate your camera and microphone, and then I'll have you read your ABT to the group, and then we'll start a discussion. I'll ask you some questions and toss out some suggestions on how we might rework it a little bit. So you'll see as we go along how it works. Is this Asa, the pronunciation? Correct me on everybody's pronunciation if I get them wrong. But Asa, are you there? And can you join me and activate your camera and microphone?
Yep.
How you doing? Is it Asa?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay. If for each of you, I'm going to ask you, where are you located?
Bowling Green, Kentucky.
Wonderful. All righty. Okay. How about if you read this one sentence and but therefore to us, and I will add the color coding as we go along. So go for it.
Hydrogen has shown promise as the future of zero carbon energy storage, but partly due to the cost of noble metal electrocatalysis for alkaline water splitting, most hydrogen production continues to rely on fossil fuels. Given these considerations, my work demonstrated the synthesis of an inexpensive, novel magnemite nanosphere electrode as a bifunctional, cheap, and efficient catalyst for green hydrogen production, along with a novel pathway to produce magnetite from iron hydroxide in an aerobic environment.
Great. Okay. Amazing work that you're doing there. And first thing to say is, everybody go ahead and say the words. You see, I put them into capital there. A few people had said, however, I changed it to but. These words are very powerful. And if you notice, if you start working with the word but,
Yeah, why?
Everybody muted there?
Like tomorrow? Yeah. Okay.
Hello, Mike. Is there a way to mute people? I'm hearing somebody else's audio going on.
Got it. Sorry about that.
Okay, great. Thanks. Okay. And so these but and therefore are really powerful individual words. And the more you work with them, you kind of get sensitized to them, and you start to hear other people using them in conversation. You realize they're words that help focus what's going on. They help kind of with the transition, and especially this word "but." But is a very powerful word. Is a word of contradiction, and so it changes the direction that we're going. So with this narrative structure, you start off with a bunch of things that are going one direction, this and this and this and this, and then the word "but" changes the direction. But actually, this is what we found out. So it's powerful. And in fact, the word "however" does the same thing, but it's not quite as powerful. And sometimes you might want to use "however" to be a little softer, more diplomatic with what you have to say. But on the other hand, if you're talking to a big audience, you get their attention, the word "but" is really what you do. And that just activates people's brains because it's a word of contradiction. It's changing the direction of flow. Okay. So now we're going to go to work on this. And as I say, I'm just going to ask you some questions. And what we'll work towards is suggestions I've got on how to just tweak it a little bit to make it a little more clear in terms of communication. First question we like to start with, I will for each of these, is what would you say this is a story of? And we define the word story as a journey that goes from point A to point B. And something changes along the way. That's the big thing with a story. You want something to change. So what is it that you're wanting to change in the world here? What's missing in the world for point A, the starting point, and what do you want to eventually have in the world for point B? Asa, can you give a shot at that? What's the main thing you're talking about adding to the world or fixing?
So as I said, most green hydrogen production is not sustainable across the world because of the high cost of a lot of these electrocatalysts for producing that hydrogen.
Okay, wait. Let me stop you right there. So that was perfect what you just said. So everybody listen to what he said. It's not feasible because of the high cost. You're going to see the word "because" used in the red material in my rewrites. Because is also a really powerful word, and that's perfect that you use that because that's what your mind does. What you did was you said the big general thing, it's not feasible, and then you started getting the specifics of the word "because." That's what you want to do exactly. Okay, and so then it's not feasible because of what you talked about here. So in simple terms, looking at what you got up there on the screen, what's the main thing that you're wanting to sort of fix? Or
make
change?
green hydrogen production cheaper.
There you go. Okay, so when you say something like that, you'll see I've got underlined what I thought as well. And that's, if I had asked you to pick one word in that whole paragraph, that's what you would have picked. You said cheaper, but you've got it actually up there, inexpensive. Exactly. So perfect. We're on the same wavelength with this. So at the simplest of all levels, and this is super important for communication, you always want to make sure that you know at the simplest of all levels, you can explain to people, if somebody gets confused by your whole thing here, what's this basically about? You need to be able to say, look at the core. It's as simple as we got to make it cheaper. You want to figure out that simple little catchphrase, which you then expand into all the details you see on the screen. But it's really important you're able to tell that. And that's the essence of good communication. Take it down to the simple and then expand it back out to the detailed. But if you just start with the detailed, you'll never get to people. People get lost in all the details. So that's great. And this is really good. So basically, what's the story of the need to make it more inexpensive? There you go. And so the next part of this exercise that we do is to ask the researcher, what's the core problem? And we usually say, can you tell it to us in 5 words or less? And that's what I came up with, which you had already come up with. Hydrogen production is too expensive. That's 5 words. Everything for communication begins with the problem. You saw what we were going through at the beginning there, setup, problem, solution. It all starts by figuring out what is your problem, and ideally just one problem. And some ABTs suffer quite often from having multiple problems, and they get all confusing, things like that. People mostly just want to know what's the core main problem, even if you have to go fairly broad with it. So this is good. You've got a good, simple core problem here. Now, let me show you here what I would suggest for a little bit of rewrite. And so you want to begin with the blue material. That's your setup. That's the big challenge. And you want to tell us, you want to paint a picture of the future before, and you've got that sort of here. And that's really nice in this one. You say hydrogen's shown promise as the future of zero carbon energy storage. That's exactly what you want. That's really good as well. Just want to maybe even expand on that some more, because this is what people really want to listen to in the beginning in communication. The first thing they'd like to hear is what's your vision of the future? What are you offering here? You know, how do you think things could work really well? So you've got here what you've said there. Hydrogen has shown promise as the future of zero carbon energy storage. Then you could take this further, and this is where you start to make for powerful communication, is to get people excited about the vision that you see that you're working towards long before we get into the problem. And one of the main tools to do that with, that I'll use for all of these, is the if-then tool. So this is a little piece of logic, but it's really powerful. So look at how we're doing this. You've said it's shown potential, and now we're sort of weaving your problem up front here, but we're doing it in a really positive manner. Instead of saying, you know, it's not feasible, we're saying that if we can make it affordable, then can you give us a few more specifics to add to that? What, after the word then, what would you say? If we can make it more affordable, then what would that lead to?
It can lead to more implementation and fuel cells, and across the world, just more green hydrogen production.
That's the first thing everybody really wants to hear. And in fact, if you can add a few specifics on that, you know, and it can lead to, you know, 33% improvement in energy production in 18 different countries or something like that. That's what you want up front, because that starts to make this thing really important. And the audience starts to get really excited about, wow, you're telling us there could be this amazing thing in the future. And they really just want to hear, so where are we? Is it all set to go right now? And only when you get it all built up like that, you built up their expectations, their hopes, everything like that, they're listening really closely to you. That's when you drop what we call the butt bomb. You saw in that video before, the red material. That's when you drop the bad news. And that's when you activate everybody's brains. And that's where you say, but, and the word but is really powerful to punctuate it, but it's not affordable right now. That's where you've broken everybody's hearts. You know, you've painted this big picture of what they want, like little kids. Yes, yes, I want that toy. And now you're taking it away from them. You know, as cool as this toy is, it's not affordable right now. Then exactly as you did, the word because, now we want to know, well, why isn't it affordable? You've just told us this terrible news, it's not affordable. And that's when you jump into the specifics of what you've got. The cost of noble metal, yada, 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 is not feasible, blah, blah, blah. And once you've set this up here, and I'm not sure that's exactly what your details are, you can fine tune that. So when I go through this version, for me, it's just giving you a ballpark estimate kind of, but it's giving you an idea of how you would restructure a little bit. And then once you lay it out there with that, then that's already told us what the therefore is. If you've told us what it's needed in order to make this big vision that you laid out the front work, then therefore we're going to solve this by, and then after the word by is where you go into what you've got there in your green material. So yours is really good. It's pretty close to this whole structure. And all we're really doing here is trying to use the structure and then push it further to make it more powerful, to really get people to sit up and be interested and compelled by it. Is that making any sense to you?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, and I think that the big thing there is to expand the blue material, because that's where the big challenge that you have is, why should we care? And everybody comes at you with that question in their mind. You know, why is this important to me? What's in it? And you want to address that question first thing at the beginning. You want to tell us what the basic topic is, and then using this if then gives you a chance to make people sit up and go, wow, you know, that could be important before you take it away. So great. Okay. Thanks very much. Let's move on to our second ABT build. And Nikki, are you there?
Yes, hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Great. Where are you located?
I'm in Kirkland, Washington.
Wow, wonderful. All right, everybody all around the country. How about if you read this one to us?
Fingerprints have been used as critical forensic evidence of court cases since 1905, but they're not a foolproof system with thousands of instances of incorrect rulings based on such evidence. Therefore, I created a higher quality method of fingerprinting using carbon dots and cyanoacrylate fuming to reveal more visible minutiae on fingerprints.
It's pretty clear, don't you think, what you've written there? I think most people would agree it's pretty clear. It's not confusing, it's not boring. We just want to make it a little more powerful to really get people leaning in on, wow, you know, this could really be a major innovation and improvement on things. So we'll go through the same procedure, which is start off with what's this a story of? And again, journey from point A to point B. What's the world of point A? And what's the world of point B where you're wanting to change something in the world? What's the main thing you're saying here you want to change?
Just making more accurate evidence, like higher
Yeah.
quality evidence.
Okay, if you had to point some words that are up there on the screen, what would you point to as even just one keyword, most important word?
Probably,
I
yeah, foolproof
pointed there.
system.
Yeah, that's sort of a summary of what it is. You're talking about, the problem you got right now is we've got in world A, it's not a foolproof system. In world B, we want it to be. So that's once again, the simple journey that you're wanting to do. And, it may not sound that powerful, but it's really important exercise to do. Make sure you're clear in your mind. What's the simple thing that we're trying to look? We're just trying to make this thing more accurate. So what's the problem? It's not 100% reliable. Is that a reasonable way to state it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And then why isn't it? So see, now we can start to hit on two different levels of what it is you're working on. At the broad, simple level, we've got fingerprinting, but it's not 100% reliable. Therefore, we got to make it reliable. Now there's a more finer detail level, which is why isn't it more reliable? And I think you've got it in your ABT there. Well, it's kind of the inverse of what you got there. I think correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like what you're saying is that they're beginning to realize that fingerprints aren't unique if you're not at a fine enough scale of resolution to see the differences, and that what you've come up with is a way to get to a finer scale to see those differences, so it still can be that powerful. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Great. Okay, so pretty clear on what your problem is, which is just we got to make it 100% reliable. Otherwise, it's not any good for us, ideally. Okay, so here's how I would suggest reworking this a little bit. And again, expanding out the blue material. That's the most important thing. Setting things up, taking the time to set things up. And what's really crucial in the blue material is that you've only got things in there that are absolutely essential. You don't want to just throw in information for information's sake. You want the things that really are going to support where we're headed to. So first thing you want is just your orientation here thing, which is fingerprints continue to be trusted as key piece of evidence. Okay, that's good. That tells us what we're going to be talking about here. Now we want to know how important it is. And so there's more that you could add in here, but this is where you make your case up front of why this is so important. And if we can make it 100% reliable piece of evidence, then it continue to solve cases. But more than that, you could probably add some data in there. You can say that it's used in X percentage of cases every year, and it's really crucial that it continues to be able to do that. Mainly what you're trying to do up front is to get us to understand you're talking about something that's very, very important. You could go in more detail. You could say this is one of the foundational elements of all criminal work is fingerprints, and it's used in all these different cases. And you can also kind of make clear what's at stake here. And if it turns out to not be reliable anymore, then there are all these things that are going to fall apart. So it's very, very important that we find a way to make sure that fingerprints are 100% reliable. But right now it's not 100% reliable because, and can you give us a shot there following the word because? What would you say? It's not 100% reliable because what?
Because current methods of fingerprinting don't produce high enough resolution fingerprints.
That's okay, great. And there's your key phrase there, high enough resolution. Yeah. And I think I would reword that a little bit more, even more concisely. It's not 100% reliable because its resolution today is not as strong as it needs to be. And you see, once you've said that in that place right there, then that points right to the therefore. If you've told us that it's not high enough resolution, then therefore we're going to tell you, well, then get to work, make it high enough resolution so it'll work. And that's what you're saying. And see, audiences really like that. If you pose a question, you lead them to this point and they know exactly what needs to be done. And then you tell them, this is what I'm doing. That's like really gratifying for them. Oh, great. Okay. We figured it out ourselves and you're doing it. It's too unrefined to resolve small scale differences, the way I've written it there. Therefore, I'm improving this by doing the following. And then that's what you got in there. So this is more just we're shaping it a little bit further to make it read a little more thoroughly to lead everybody in, and especially people that don't have any background in the field. Fingerprints continue to be trusted as key piece of evidence, and if we can make them 100% reliable, then it can continue to solve cases and play this hugely important role. But right now, it's not 100% reliable because it's too unrefined to resolve small scale differences. Therefore, I am working to improve this by doing the following things. So it's pretty much what you had there. That was a really good one. It's just adding a bit more up front and smoothing it out to get to the key points. And that's what is the makings of effective communication. People want, again, those three things: a really good, clear setup, so we know exactly what you're talking about, and they want to know up front, why is it important? That's one of the toughest things. And we're doing a study right now where we're looking at the writing of these ABTs by tons of people, by all of the scientists we work with. We've got a few thousand scientists. We've done this exercise with them. And what you see is the number one problem is the failure up front to explain, why is this work important? There's a tendency to just assume, well, everybody knows it's important. Well, not really. A lot of times it needs to be explained really clearly in detail. So great. Okay, thank you very much. And on to our next ABT build. Anthony, are you there? Want to activate your camera and microphone? Join us.
I don't think Anthony's here.
Aha.
Can we,
Okay.
can we just sort of walk through it? And
Yeah, let's go through this one quickly then. Okay. So this is the ABT. Coastal states are facing an undersized crabbing epidemic. Therefore, I created an iOS application that allows users to scan blue crabs, be told whether they can be harvested based on their state's size parameters in order to decrease the severity of the problem and increase the reproduction potential of the blue crab population. Everybody want to take 1 second right now, and can you see what's missing in this ABT? It's kind of missing a crucial element. And think that through, and type it into the chat window if you can. What's it missing? Go ahead and put some comments in. This is what we do in the actual training program, is that we use the chat window a lot, and we do this, let everybody look at it, and you know what's not in this ABT. It's not essential. Most people can kind of figure it out without it, but by adding this one element, it'll read much more clearly and bring a bigger, broader audience in. So yeah, a few more people type in there. What do you think is missing? Don't worry about it if you get it wrong. This is not a test. You will not be graded on it. Just give it a shot, because this is how we use the chat window is discussion, and people come up with good suggestions and things with the chat window. Okay. So here, now we'll go to work on it. And what's this a story of? It's and it's a story of being able to have the data to tell people effectively the harvesting sizes for these crabs out in the field. And basically it's about the need for better methods. So what's the problem? The measuring methods right now are inadequate. Okay, so what needs to be added to this one that wasn't there is the setup, because you look at the blue material there, that's actually stating the problem right off the bat. It's gone right to the problem. Coastal states are facing an undersized crabbing epidemic. That's absolutely a problem. You know, that's pretty dramatic, and that's just kind of jumping the gun. What you want is a little bit of setup here that is not stating a problem yet. This is just basic description. You want to start off with something simple that's kind of, we can all agree on this. Accurate and rapid measurement of crab size is essential to the crabbing industry of coastal states. That's sort of telling us what this whole ABT is going to be about, what the problem is we're talking about. And then you're going to build the dream here. You're going to, tell people the world that we'd like to see. And if we can measure crabs quickly and accurately, then we can greatly reduce the severity of the current undersize epidemic that's going on. You might add, what's meant by that. You could add a few words up there. But this is still just painting this picture of a world in which we no longer have that as a problem. Then you give us the bad news, but that's not happening right now. And you hit that word because, and maybe is it the methods are outdated? This is what I would be asking the author of this ABT. But why is it not happening right now? That's what you want to get to. And then once you get that, that's what you want to address. So therefore, I'm improving this by doing yada, yada, yada. So that's that ABT and creating this application that does this for us. Okay, great. And on that note, Nevin, do we have Nevin here? Fourth and final ABT. Hello, Nevin. Hello, Mike. Have we got Nevin here?
I do
Hello,
not
anybody?
see Nevin. I don't see that name on our participant list.
Uh-huh. Mike, you got any ideas? Hello, Mike. Are you still there?
Yep, let's just go ahead and walk through this one a little briefly while we do, like we did the last one.
Okay, let's pretend like you are Nevin. Why don't you read it for Nevin?
Okay, NASA estimates that there are over 2 million pieces of debris, 0.1 to 10 centimeters in diameter, in orbit around the Earth, and each of these poses a mission-ending threat to orbital assets. But while ground-based radar systems consistently track larger debris, they offer only limited data for this size range, resulting in unmitigated risk for active and future spacecraft. Therefore, this study develops a novel on-orbit system to detect and characterize this debris class, creating an unprecedented data set of in situ debris flux measurements.
Great. Okay. And so what would we say this is a story of? What is the world at point A as we set out on a journey? And that's what you want to do, is to lead people on a journey. What is that world in the beginning missing, and what are we going to fix or add to it? Something like that. Mike, you want to take a shot at that? You are now Nevin.
I would say offhand, detect and characterize debris.
Let's see what I underlined here. Mission ending threat. Well, yeah, okay. So this gets to be another one of these things at two different scales. So we got this problem of this threat of debris, and then more specifically, what are you going to do to address the problem? And that's what you've hit on there, is find a way to measure it. So, and this is basically a story of trying to make space travel safe. So, okay. And so once again, setup, problem, and solution. In fact, if we go back and look at this, take a look at the blue material. This is a really important one now for everybody to really soak in, because it reads pretty well. But the fact is, it's not taking advantage of how you want narrative to be shaped and worked ideally, which is you want to begin, once again, with this neutral statement at the beginning. You don't want to start getting into the land of the problem, and getting people all excited about how are we going to solve this, how are we going to solve this. You want to try and lure them into, we've got something that we're considering, and we see a world in which we can really have this working properly. But you look at what's there in the blue material right now. NASA estimates there's over 2 million pieces of debris, and each of them poses a mission-ending threat to our, that's just the whole problem right there. So that's what we've got here, is we're starting off in the problem, and there's really nowhere to go from that. And in fact, the red material then is just making the problem worse, adding to it. And in fact, what we then want, we need the more setup material, the blue material, before we get going on the drama. So what's the problem? And again, space travel is not safe, or we could craft it as we don't have a way to deal with the debris. Let's see what the draft that I came up with here. The key aspect of making safe, and so we start off with a simple, and I've gone with the more broad scale here. Key aspect of making space travel safe is avoiding debris. And if we can develop the means to measure size range, then we'll be able to do space travel effectively and safely, things like that. And we won't have to worry about the risk, and the industry will move along more rapidly. But we're not able to provide those data yet because we lack the equipment to detect and characterize the debris. Therefore, we're developing a novel in-orbit system, which will do this by yada, yada, yada. What do you think of that, Mike? Sometimes Mike and I disagree a little bit on these ABTs. Let's hammer this one out.
Yeah, and I say I would, the other way to go, and I think what we discover in what we do, and when we work on our own in our group, is you may have a couple different ways to go, and you have to sort of see which one's better. So I wonder if you could do something about space travel. Safety of space travel is important, and if we can assure that that.
Well,
that-
wait a second. I think I see the direction that you were going before, which is there's another way to write this one that's more specific, which is that a fundamental part of safe space travel is avoiding debris.
Right.
And if we can have the techniques to avoid debris, then we can make sure that space travel, is safe. And here's all the benefits we'll get by having no run-ins with debris. But right now we're not able to do that because we lack the equipment that can do that challenge. How's that sound to you?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So that's putting into the blue material. And again, you always want the blue material to be very positive. It's not, you don't want to start off with the problems. And that's, I think, the overarching most important lesson of everything we've run through here. And we're getting right near the end now. In fact, let's see, we go to Q&A and let me stop sharing on that note. And and
Randy, while you do that, let me just, what you saw between Randy and me is that that the way this works best is when you start talking it out with someone.
yes.
And
Yes.
I can't tell you the number of times that he and I have talked to each other about trying to work out something, and we each come at different directions and we talk it out, and then finally we hit on the one that we both go, that's it.
Yeah, and that's a crucial point, which is that what this is all about is shaping the narrative of putting your information together in the right form so that it'll hold people's interest and won't bore them. And to get that form, you cannot do it by yourself. You can try, you can do an approximation, but you really need to work with other people listening to what you do. Exactly as Mike is saying there, how he and I work together on this. And in fact, when we run our training, we tend to break people into circles of 5 individuals. So we have what we call working circles. One person has their ABT, just as we did there. And then 4 other people are asking questions of it and pushing and prodding and helping to shape that. And eventually you end up with a draft that the main person can read back to the group, and it gets smoothed out and worked out for them. And then it works. You've got to have those other people working with you to make this stuff work smoothly in the end. And a lot of these techniques we've derived from the way that movies are made. It's the same thing. You usually have teams of writers working on TV shows and movies, and they're all reading the scripts and shaping it over time and making it into the optimal form that will hold people's interest and take them on a journey. So on that note, Mike, are there any questions? Anybody got any thoughts? See any relevance to all this?
Rachel, do we have anybody with questions? We can take them from anyone, not just the AJSers. So if anyone has questions.
As we're waiting to see if, is there a question?
No, nothing yet. But feel free to take yourselves off mute or raise your hand, or type things in the chat, whichever way you feel most comfortable asking the question.
Yeah, this is a technique we've been developing for the past decade, basically, and we now are using it with major organizations around the world, with the World Bank and with the National Park Service, U.S. Forest System or Forest Service. About 25 to 30 groups in the past few years have worked with us on implementing this slowly but surely. It's new. It's derived. It comes from the books that I've written, and I've derived all that from the way that people communicate from the entertainment community. And they have kind of mastered how to use the power of story and this narrative structure like this. And the realization that it's the same thing for not just for telling stories, but for argumentation, for logic, for reason, and for comedy, like the joke thing I said at the beginning, and also the way that science gets communicated. It's all the same basic principles of how you communicate. Is that a question? Yes. You want to read it, Mike? Or you can join us.
I don't see a question.
Let's see here.
Can
Any key
I ask a
phrases other than
question?
the one you showed today that you would recommend using to adhere to the ABT structure? Those were kind of the central elements. And so the nice thing about the ABT is that it's got this super simple core to begin with, which is the 3 elements. And, but, and therefore, they're only the words that are the most commonly used words in the English language for it. But the 3 forces are agreement, contradiction, and then consequence. And that's the way you want to communicate always, is you want to begin with agreement and then hit that point of contradiction, but here's our problem that we're working on. And once you establish the problem, then everybody wants to move forward. Okay, therefore, what are you doing about it? and is the most common word of agreement, but is the most common word of contradiction. Therefore is not the most common word of consequence, but it's a really powerful word. The most common word is so, but therefore is really powerful and it focuses people. Therefore, this is what we're doing. Let's see here. Any other questions here?
I had a question come through
Yes.
to me. The question was, when was the narrative format first developed?
About 400 years ago, to tell you the truth. So in the 1700s, 1600s, and 1700s, the great philosophers back then, they realized that there's this three-part structure to how we communicate and how we think and how we do everything. I mean, it's the same as beginning and middle and end. That's the same thing in a story. There are three fundamental parts. There's the setup, there's the problem, there's the solution. And back then it was referred to as the triad. You can research it. Hegel and Kant and other philosophers were the ones that originated it. And they had different words for it, but their words were thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And the thesis is that setup, that's what we can all agree on. Antithesis is the but material, but here's something new. And then the synthesis is pulling those two things together. What we've got from the past, this new idea that's come in, and now synthesizing them in the third part. And that's the way that we build knowledge, is we keep building on what's in the past. And when you write a scientific paper, you'll see exactly that structure. The first part of a paper is the introduction, where you set everything up. This is what we know from the past. And then at the end of that is the but. That's you say, but what nobody's ever managed to study is this part of it. And then the therefore, here's what I did for the methods. Here's what we got for results. And then you jump into discussion and you go through the same thing again. You begin the discussion. So I told you, people have studied this, this, and this. But now we've got this new set of data we're presenting this paper. Therefore, let's look at how we need to change our thinking in the model. That's the way that science progresses, those three fundamental forces, and you'll see it everywhere you turn. And it's at the core of really communicating effectively. And on that note, it looks like we are at the end of the hour. And I have to run off, but if there are any more questions, send them to Mike and he'll get them to me. And thank you guys very, very much. Hope that worked somewhat. Does that sound good, Mike?
Yep, I will stay for just a couple more minutes.
Great. Okay, see ya.
Philip Winchell asked me to say something about elevator statements, and this short ABT is the elevator statement. It's what you say to somebody when they ask you going up in the elevator, what is it you do? It's what you say to the person who comes up to your poster. Well, tell me about your research. Well, the very first thing you want to tell them is that short ABT. That gives them the whole story. Then you can go into the detail. It can be the first sentence in your abstract, the first sentence in your introduction. That's what captures the listener and keeps them from struggling. If you launch right into the problem, or you launch right into how you set up your experiment, they're still sitting there thinking, well, but why are they doing this? What are they doing? So you're giving them a whole short story of your research. It doesn't have all the details, but if you capture their interest, then they're going to say, okay, now I want more detail. I want to know how that all fits together. Now I know why you're sequencing that gene. Now I know why you're working on an application to monitor size in crabs. Any other questions?
Hey, Mike, can I also open it up to any questions that folks have about registration or the program or anything like that? I've been getting a lot in my chat and I just don't want to miss any. So if you've sent me something or have questions that the whole group would benefit from hearing, we can stay on as well and answer those.
Wait, can I ask it now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Linda. Yeah, I was going to say yours. I need more details on that. So I was hoping you would ask it out loud.
Okay, awesome. So when I'm registering for the AAAS thing, the one that you have to pay $75 for, when it asks me for my profile, I'll like put in my name, and it'll show up like my name, like as like a registrant. But then when I go to like move on, it pops up two of like the same person and it won't let me do anything from there.
Oh, we ran into that issue last year, and Rachel, and I think they may have to resolve that issue on site. It has to do, they use a different company for registration than for constructing the badges. And there was a problem last year that Marty Clark was able to resolve on site.
Yeah, I wonder, do you know, did your chaperone or somebody from your state already try to register you? Because
We
that
were
could be the
supposed to
problem.
do it. We were supposed to do it ourselves, so I don't think anyone has.
I think for now, if you can send me the questions via email, so to the admin, and you might have already, sorry, I haven't checked it in the last couple of days, but if you send it to the admin at academiesofscience.org email address, I'll forward it on to AAAS and see if we can get an answer for you. And it looks like others are having the same issue. So we will get that question sent over and see if we can get an answer sent out here in the next couple of days.
Okay, but
The registration deadline, if you don't have everything submitted tomorrow, just let me know if you're having issues, and we should have a few days flexible here to get everything wrapped up. So don't panic if you are working on the January 15th deadline.
okay, awesome. Could you possibly send the email for me to send my problem to in like the chat box?
Oh, yep, I'll write it in the chat.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep, it's just you can reply to any of those reminder emails about the event tonight. Any other questions? And if you don't have a question, feel free to hop off. I think we've wrapped up everything.
What time, here's a question, Vinov says, what time does the AJS presentation end on Saturday, since it matters for flight logistics?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great question. I was just looking that up for somebody else too. Right now, we are scheduled to wrap up the last poster session around 4:15. You will be split into 3 groups. And so if you have an earlier flight and you need to leave early, please send me an email and we can try to work with you. But please try to be there until after 4:15. And to get to the, I don't know, Philip, what's the amount of time they should leave to get to the airport from the convention center?
Hello, Rachel. If you took the public transportation, probably 1 hour. If that's a light rail system that will get you from the Colorado Convention Center straight up to the airport. So probably about an hour for that. If you take an Uber or a Lyft or something, probably 30 minutes. But if you're leaving, I would say if you're leaving Denver before maybe 6 or 7 o'clock, you may want to talk to us about getting an earlier poster session.
Yeah, I was going to say, and remember, you also need time to get through the airport. So if you have a 6 o'clock flight, then you'd want to give, at least 2 hours from when you need to leave the convention center. Yeah. So you'd need to leave no later than 4 if you have all your stuff with you at the convention center.
And we will figure out a way that you can bring your baggage and stuff to the convention center, and we'll get someone to watch it during the poster session. So then you can finish your poster session, grab your bags, and head toward the airport, and you won't need to go back to the hotel to retrieve your bags.
I have a couple more questions about arrivals. What time should we leave on Sunday?
Sunday, you can leave anytime. Everything will be wrapped up on Saturday afternoon.
And then would it be okay to arrive at Denver at roughly 3 p.m. on Wednesday?
Yep, that should be just fine. The main thing that you want to be able to arrive at on Wednesday is the opening banquet, and that probably starts still up around 5 or 6.
I believe it's going to start at 6. Normal registration will close probably at 5. Normal registration is from 2 to 5. There is, of course, always late registration through later on in the evening. So anytime you get there on Friday afternoon or early evening is good. If you arrive after 6, you're going to miss the food and some of the presentations.
Yeah, and I'm getting a couple of direct messages. If you have an earlier flight on Saturday, so if you have to leave anytime before, I would say 6:30 on Saturday, please send me an email and we can try to if you've already got your flight booked and you need to leave before 6:30, send me an email and we'll try to get you scheduled earlier for the poster session, because it will start earlier in the afternoon and there's 3 different sections of it. Some people, I've actually had a lot of emails of people asking if you can arrive late. I think, and Philip, you can give an answer to this, like, and this is not just arrive late on Wednesday, but can you come on Thursday? Can you come on Friday? And I think the answer to that is yes, but you will miss some really critical components.
Yes,
if you don't get
that is not desirable.
Yeah, so the only thing that you really absolutely have to be at is the poster session on Saturday. But the lab tours on Thursday are going to be incredible. Wednesday night is when you're sort of going to be able to get to meet everybody. Friday morning, I think, is our breakfast with scientists, or no, that's Saturday morning.
Yeah.
But so there's
You're missing a lot. You're missing a lot.
You're missing a lot if you don't get there
on Thursday afternoon or Thursday evening.
Wednesday.
I'm sorry, strike.
Yep.
Wednesday afternoon or Wednesday evening.
Yep. Philip, there's a question in the chat about transportation to Union, or transportation from Union Station to the hotel. Can you just give us a brief overview of how to handle that? And I'll also pop a link into the chat that explains it in a little more detail.
Yes, there's a couple ways. There's a couple ways to do it. There's a Denver surface rail system that will get you on a single rail car. It'll take you from the airport to Union Station in downtown Denver. From there, you've got a couple options. If it was a beautiful, nice, sunny day, you could walk it. Don't plan on a beautiful, nice, sunny day in Denver in February. If not, there is a free surface bus that runs from the Union Station to near the hotel. And also there is a way that if you take the rail from the hotel, go south of the city a ways, get off, cross the platform, and get on another train, it'll take you right to the hotel. A fourth way is when you get to Union Center, or Union Station, I'm sorry, when you get to Union Station, you could take a Uber or a Lyft the short distance to the Hilton. What is that specific bus that's free? It's called the free bus. If you go on to the Denver Mass Transit website and put in that you want to go from the airport to the Hilton downtown, it will map that out for you. Any other questions on AJAS logistics or about the program?
I think that was everything from the chat, but did anybody else have any questions? What are awards associated with going to AJAS? The question just came through for me. They're really like, so being selected as a delegate is sort of the award. If you attend as a delegate and you present your research, then you become an AJAS fellow and are awarded a certificate at the end of the conference. Philip, anything else you want to expand on?
That's correct, Rachel. AJAS is not a competition. AJAS, when everybody who arrives at AJAS as an equal and everybody leaves AJAS as an equal. You will become a fellow of the American Junior Academy of Science. You'll also have a very enriching experience where you're going to see what it's like to participate in a large scientific meeting, You're going to meet many new people. You're going to be exposed to a lot of new ideas. This is an experience that cannot be duplicated in a classroom. But again, it is not a competition in any way.
And then the follow-up question is AJAS fellow the same as AAAS fellow? And that it is not.
No, it
AAAS
is not.
fellow, there are a couple different AAAS fellows. They have a science and technology policy fellowship program that can be considered a fellow. But a fellow at a scientific society is someone who's really excelled in their field and has been nominated by their peers to be named a fellow at, and that indicates that they're, they've done a significant amount of service over their careers to their scientific discipline. So it's definitely a very different thing.
Yeah, only about, I think, less than 10% of the members of AAAS are named fellows. But the AJS fellow, you can list that when you're applying for college, as you can list it on your resume. It's very, very good to have.
Well, those are all the questions that I have. If you have any questions, again, just feel free to email that admin@academiesofscience.org. Thanks for your patience, and we'll get back to you as soon as possible. I got a question here that came in on my chat again. Are there sub meetings per discipline, like a chem specific or a bio specific meeting? Mike, do you want to comment real quick on just how the AAAS meeting is split up?
Yeah, the AAAS is divided among a number of disciplinary sections. In the past, those sections all had meetings at the AAAS meeting. A lot of them, and I think most of them now, hold them online at another time, or sometimes through the meeting. You can look in the program and see if any of them are meeting at the AAAS meeting. They're always welcome to have you at them. They're open meetings. So if one of the sections that you're interested in is there, go ahead and join them. If not, there should be information on the AAAS website when they are meeting. And they usually, if they meet online, they have a 2 to 3 hour meeting online. They meet at the meeting, they'll meet, in the past, it's usually been Friday evenings, usually for an hour and a half to 3 hours, depending on the section.
So go ahead.
Oh yeah, just a real quick note to the question. The best term you could use on a college resume is that you are a fellow, and that is a capital F fellow of the American Junior Academy of Science. I would also point out that when you get to AJAS, we are, of course, we are completely a part of the AAAS annual meeting, and all of our AJAS student delegates have full access to any part of the AAAS meeting. You are an equal member of AAAS to any adult professional scientist who's there. You can attend any sessions that you find interesting, and you're encouraged to do so.
Thank you, Philip and Rachel and everyone. And I'm going to take my leave now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.